And we are back. I'm Zach with my brother Eric, and it's been a while, Eric.
Yep, yep. I know. Last week we had a sick day. I dropped the ball with a sick kid at home.
That's right. Getting
Yep.
back to basics.
Yeah.
Um, Actually, I just got back from a fantastic weekend out in Virginia Beach. So we got together with my coaches and other affiliate owners, and it was awesome just talking and um, yeah, just I don't know. I feel like whenever you're in something, it's great to get that personal, like face to face, getting back. I don't know.
Yeah.
It
Like
was it
the
was a
experience,
what's that?
the immersive experience.
Oh yeah, it was great.
Yep.
And
We could probably and would I think we would benefit from doing an episode just about that of like how it was for you because I've gone through that training.
yeah,
Um, so yeah, it'd be cool. I think we should do that coming up here.
absolutely. All right, yeah, like the Enlifted,
Yep.
I would love it.
Cool.
Um, but yeah, actually, did you get my text the other day?
Yes, I did.
Cool.
Yeah. So
Um,
around
but yeah,
Christmas time.
well, so around along the same lines, getting back to just the basics, the fundamentals, and we were talking about that the other week. CrossFit is known for doing functional movements, and with these functional movements, CrossFit has came up with their 9 foundational movements, right? So these are the things that CrossFit was built on, and I think that we sort of get lost um, in tricks, right? There's muscle ups, there's double unders, there's people lifting heavy weights, right? But it's like, all right, why are we doing those things?
Yep.
And one of the big things is um, things that are seen in CrossFit, especially in the on the games on YouTube and the fancy stuff. They are expressions of your fitness, not necessarily what you do to train, right?
Right.
That you
Yeah.
might
And
use them in training, but when you start training, it's like build the foundation and then you can do these other things.
yeah, I think the term functional fitness has just been like way overused and broadened to I don't even know. I mean, I picture like the people doing animal walk, crawls, like stuff on the floor, rolling over, and then that's or like if you're using a kettlebell, then for sure you're doing functional fitness. I'm like,
Right.
no, no. Like, and this is a huge benefit of CrossFit and like Coach Glassman putting it all together that it's very specific, has very clear definitions of what we mean by that, where, you go to Walmart and like every single thing in the fitness area says functional fitness.
Yeah, like
Who knows?
Bosu balls and hey,
Right.
you're balancing on one foot and um, really so when Greg Glassman was defining CrossFit, using functional movements because he described CrossFit as constantly varied functional movements executed at high intensity. And yeah, it leaves a lot to be desired because you go, what is functional? And people have totally bastardized the word by
Yeah.
just using it in marketing. But when we're talking about functional movements, there's a few criteria that they're going to have. So number one is that are they natural? Are these things that you are going to be doing outside of the gym? Right. This is
Hmm.
not things that were made up by a teacher. So if you think about squatting and pressing and picking things up, right? So you're sitting down, standing up, you're picking things up, you're pushing things. These are all things that you do in life, and they're essential, right? If I cannot do these things, then I end up need dependent living, right? So if I can't get up off the toilet, if I can't get up off the ground, if I can't pick up my groceries after I had to put them down to get my keys out of my pocket, if I can't put something up on the top shelf or even reach my hand over my head to get a cup, I need somebody to help me. And so these are essential things that if you do not have them, you no longer can live independently. And this is like the definition of decrepitude. And
Yep.
this is what we're trying to fight off. Another thing is that these movements, they're compound movements. So we're going to use multiple joints. So if you think about a squat, your ankles, knees, and hips are all going to be working in conjunction together. And if you can even take your spine, and if you take every vertebrae as a joint, right? You have to control these while others are moving also.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're going to be multiple joint movements as opposed to like a bicep curl or a hamstring curl. And they're also going to move core to extremity, which means that you're going to be moving from inside to outside. So if you think like towards your belly button or hip, out towards your shoulder. If you think like a punch, right? It's going to hips into shoulders into arms. Swinging a bat, hips into shoulders into arms, and everything. Even kicking a soccer ball or any of these things are going to be moving that way, and that's how we produce a lot of power. And that's another thing that these movements do. So each of these movements, out of the 9 foundational movements, they create a lot of power. And so what we mean by that is that you can move large loads, long distances quickly, right? Or you could even just say, I can do a lot of work. So if you think about the amount of work let's say that I'm going to do a deadlift, so I'm going to pick something up, right? And let's say that I lift a 100-pound bar as many times as I can in a minute, right? And I might be able to do, let's see, hundreds, maybe even thousands of pounds of work, right? In this minute. Now take a bicep curl. You can even do it as heavy as you can, or light and do it really fast. Can I do as much work? So say that I have a 25-pound dumbbell. How many times can I lift it a certain distance in a minute? I'm going to be able to do a lot more weight or just a lot more work for like
Mm-hmm.
move a larger load, longer distance in the same amount of time by doing these compound movements.
Yep. Yeah, and it really even I think it's fascinating when you start to look at the movements
Mm-hmm.
and those different criteria that we're
Mm-hmm.
using to define functional movements
Yeah.
that like they're really discovered. It's not like someone with a master's degree in exercise science was like, these are the ways that you should be doing it. It's really the opposite of like watching people move, looking what works best, what's healthiest for your joints,
Mm.
right? What keeps you safest and what does the most work. And these are the things, these are the movement patterns that meet those criteria,
Right.
right? And so it's not like we're inventing anything new. We're describing biomechanics.
Mm. Yeah.
These are the ways you should that your body is designed to move, and the ways that it moves best, and that it does things the safest.
Right.
So learn to do those really well, and then you can start to express it more broadly, like we said in the CrossFit Games, in gymnastics, right? Like a lot of gymnastics, competitive gymnastics is not functional, right? It's like super wild stuff, but it's an expression of your ability to do these functional movements of
Absolutely.
the core to extremity, overhead mobility, all of those things.
Right. Well, speaking of the foundational movements, so we have 9 foundational movements, and so you have 3 in the squatting. All right. So you have a squat, so just a body weight squat. Just so think about lowering your center of mass, right? So it's going to bring my hips down as far as I can while still staying balanced, right? Then we've got a front squat where I'm going to be loaded in the front, and uh, so now instead of that center of mass being around the middle, you've actually created a combined center of mass, right? So whether it's like holding a dumbbell or holding a kid, and you have to get down to the ground, right, to pick up your keys because they just threw them, because that's what kids do. They want your keys and they throw them on the ground, and then you pick them up.
Yep.
But so now you've got a front squat and then the overhead squat. So, and with the overhead squat, now we're holding something overhead, keeping it balanced over that middle of the foot while lowering yourself to the ground. And so each of these similar, right? So you've got certain things that we're going, like certain criteria that we're going to have to safely, efficiently, and effectively lower ourselves towards the ground. And really, like we talked about, this is a natural thing. If you watch children, like this is like their rest position, and
Hmm.
this is how they play on the floor. And in countries, this is how we eat. This is how we go to the bathroom, right? And now, when you start loading that in different ways, these are again things that we're more or less going to do. And then if you think about the overhead squat, this is really um, showing that you have that capacity, but also showing that we have control through full range of motion in all of our joints. So an overhead squat, um, if we can do this, right? So you probably won't see this very often in life, right? Where you're holding something over your head and you're squatting down on the ground. But if you can do it, it tells me a lot about your fitness, whether core strength, right, flexibility in your shoulders, flexibility in your ankles, knees, and hips, right, and then just control and balance.
Yep.
And so it's like the optimal expression of your squat.
Yep. Yeah, and like stability. And I think, I mean, you are not typically going to see a full overhead squat in life.
Mm-hmm.
You will see iterations of it of like shorter amounts, like shorter ranges of motion, and it transfers to some of the other movements that we'll talk about, like push press and push jerk.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you have the stability and the strength and the coordination in an overhead squat, then you're better prepared for these other movements that you're probably going to use more often.
Right. All right.
Which
So we've got.
I have used an overhead squat in life where I had to move a calf house by myself, which is like basically like a dog house for a calf.
Okay.
So I had to get inside, get squat down underneath, stand up, and then walk it to where it's supposed to go, and then squat it back down.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Real thing that happened once.
Right. Yeah, and you know what? I think there is other, especially like with construction, building, things like that. And it's not a traditional overhead squat where you're just trying to balance it over like the middle of your body, but
Right.
it's usually either like that where you're just lifting something up for a second that's over your head, or even maybe a little bit more forward, and it's like a little squat. Yeah, like tipping things up and over, or plywood, like getting it up and onto a roof, or like things like
Right.
that
Like putting
happens
up
all
a
the
tent,
time. Yeah,
putting up a whatever, a pergola or something, like lifting beams overhead. All of
right.
those things are variations of that, which again, it's the movement pattern that we're talking about of like having your arms overhead and moving your hips with a stable core. Like
Right.
that's the movement pattern. It's not holding something here and squatting all the way down and all the way up. Like
Yeah.
that's the full range that we're talking about. And this
Right.
is, that goes for all of these movements. But even like pushing a car, if you got your
Yeah.
arms out and you're leaned over and you're pushing, it's still the same movement pattern.
Right.
Arms locked out, core's tight, and you're moving your legs.
Yeah. Question is, how many people still push cars? I feel like that was a semi-normal thing to see, but I feel with the like the advent of cellular phones, no, nobody is like pushing their car to the gas station anymore. Like it's just like, come get me,
That's a good point.
you
Yeah,
know?
I see a lot of cars pulled over, just like abandoned on the side of the road,
Right.
probably waiting for a tow truck. I remember one time, I was getting driven up to school in Milwaukee, and mom, classic, did not fill up her gas tank,
Mm-hmm.
and I had to push the car. I think it was almost 2 miles,
Dang.
up an overpass, down an overpass, up another overpass, down another overpass. My calves and legs were
I was gonna
just.
say that is like how long does that take?
It took a long time. And then we got to the exit, and I'm like going up the exit to the gas station, and some guys pulled over and like, "You want a hand?" And I'm like, "Nope."
I'm
I know
finishing
what
this
mile
off
marker
myself.
started at. Yeah, yeah. And I want to say that I pushed it the whole distance myself.
That is fantastic. Well, and that's one of the benefits of functional movements is that they apply, like it allows you to produce more work, right?
Yep.
So back to our movement. So we have the squats. We got squat, front squat, and then overhead squat, and then we've got our presses. So we've got a press. So and this would just be like a military press or a shoulder press. So only using your arms. Then a push press where you get a little dip and drive, and then our jerk where it's you're going to jump and then land underneath it so that you can stand it up. And these three movements, I feel like the first question that usually comes up is like, what about a bench press? And the bench press is a great movement, and it's going to be good for strength. Um, but the press has a longer range of motion, and if you and it's a little bit more applicable. Although you can think when I think about bench press and practical applications. So again, having that strength to push a car, right? Just being able to keep your arms locked out, but then also getting up off the ground, right? So doing a push up or something like that. But remember that we're looking for that practical application, right? And putting stuff up over your head, whether it's onto the top shelf of your garage, right? And actually, when we think about the push press, I always think about this, just where it's a little bit heavy, so you just give it a right?
Yep.
And I mean, this is probably one of the ones that you use the most, right? Is because you end up giving that little bit of a bounce, or when people are lifting weights and they're doing shoulder press, and you're like, that's cheating. That's the one.
Yeah.
But if you think about it, now we're using more joints, right? Using that core to extremity, and we're able to produce a little bit more work. And then same thing with the jerk. This is just like a progression that, hey, I'm gonna lift a little bit heavier, and so now I'm gonna use my legs as much as I can to get that weight a little bit higher, and then all I have to do is get underneath it, and I can stand it back up with my legs. And this lets you produce so much more, or like so much more work than either of these other movements.
Hmm. So you're saying that you use your legs to drive a weight up, and then you get under it in an overhead squat type position and stand
Exactly.
up.
Exactly.
Right? Like there's so much overlap here when, again, you think of it not as an exercise, but as a pattern of movement in your shoulders of taking something here and getting it here and
Yeah.
using your legs to extend, right? Like stand all the way up, squat down, whether it's 2 inches or a full foot down to the bottom. Like you're just hinging. Your shoulders
Right.
are doing what shoulders do, your legs are doing what legs do, and you're combining those in different combinations.
Right. Yeah. And I'll tell you what, the jerk, like I like to think of taking my kids and putting them onto my back, so you get them up here, and then
Hmm.
you give a little bounce, and now we're getting underneath it. I didn't have to lift them. Like once I got them to my shoulders, it was my legs that did the work, and then my arms are just moving around it.
Yeah, yeah. Like instead of moving the weight, which is harder, move
Yeah,
yourself around the weight.
absolutely. So we got press, push, press, and jerk, and then we've got all of our lifting from the ground. So you've got deadlift, sumo deadlift, high pull, and then the med ball clean, right? So our deadlift, this is literally just picking something up, but we want to do it well. And there's all kinds of people picking up all kinds of things really crappy. So it's like, hey, what if I started lifting things naturally, effectively, and efficiently? And if you think about a machine, right, they're going to set this up with levers and balance and whatever you want here, stability, so that you can lift well. And lots of times people go, I can't deadlift my back, and it's like, if you can't deadlift because of your back, you should be learning how to deadlift, because what are you going to do again when something falls to the ground and I need to pick it up? That
Yep.
that is all we're doing.
I know multiple people who within the last month or so
Hmm.
have tweaked or thrown out their backs, all under 40.
Yeah,
And this is
and
it. Like learn
and
how to do
doing
these
what?
things and you will never throw out your back.
Right. And you know what? I mean, really, what you want to do is you want to learn this skill in a controlled environment like a gym. Because if you're going to try and learn it when you're in life and life is just happening, whether it's, hey, this is a weight that I've never lifted before, or I'm doing this in an emergency situation, you want to have the reps so that you are strong, even if you're in a suboptimal position. Because guess what? In the gym, when you are deadlifting with a bar, it is the most optimal way that you can pick something up, right? As opposed to you're trying to lift that refrigerator, which is a ridiculously weird. You always get the, it's not heavy, it's just awkward, and there's truth to that,
Hmm.
and it's also usually a cop out because we're not very strong.
So some friends of ours just moved 2 weeks ago, and they hired some movers for the last couple big things, including a 700-pound safe.
Oh my goodness.
And so there were two guys there. They then called more guys to come help. They put on like the shoulder straps, put them under, and I think someone said, lift with your legs, not with your back, which if you've never practiced, you have no clue what that means or what it feels
Yes.
like. And they all like stood up, and I'm looking at them because you tighten it down so you're in like a crouch already. And I'm like, this is a disaster. No, this is not how you lift this.
Right.
And yeah, they did not complete the job that way. We ended up basically lowering it, rolling it down onto rollers and moving it. But even that, like again, like just being able to do those movements and then get it up a ramp, it, like you're saying, like you want to be practicing this stuff in a safe environment so that when someone says lift with your legs, you know what that means and you know how to brace your core and protect your spine with your muscles and not hope that the lifting suspenders belt elastic thing that you got on Amazon because you're moving is going to do that for you.
Oh yeah. All right, so we got our deadlift, and then actually even more applicable, I almost think, especially when it comes to moving, is the sumo deadlift high pull, right? And so the sumo deadlift high pull, you're going to have your legs a little bit wider, so a little bit outside your shoulders, hands underneath you, so like more straight down inside your legs, and then you're going to stand up and then pull. And this is often like, hey, I need to put something into a truck, right? You're going to pick up that luggage, whatever it is, hip pop, pull it up, right? Because my arms might not be able to do it, but if I give it a little bit of a boost with my legs and like squeeze my butt really hard, almost like you're jumping, now I get to move this together. And again, now we got that core to extremity, right? Where you're using big muscles into small muscles. You're able to move things a lot farther. So instead of just being able to stand up with it, you're able to pick it up high, throw it up onto a shelf or onto the bed of a truck. And this is probably one of the most applicable in doing work outside of the gym. And it's funny because it's probably one of those ones that most people are like, that stupid lift, right? Everybody wants to do a squat because you get to do a lot of weight. You do like your conventional deadlift, and it's like, yeah, I got a ton. But you can't necessarily do as much weight with sumo deadlift high pull, but it allows you to use more of your body and move things farther.
Yep. I know, again, more application. When I was working for the race company, we had, I don't know what, they must have been 5 gallon water jugs
Hmm.
for the races. And they all went on these shelves. And so they'd have to, after races, they'd get cleaned and then filled and then put back on the shelves. And that's all it was. Like lift it up onto shelves that are a head high.
Yeah.
And if you don't have that pattern, like I could imagine a lot of people getting really hurt or smashing a ton of water jugs. You don't know what you're doing. You don't feel confident with that movement.
Right.
But yeah, just getting boxes up on a shelf
Yeah.
or your kitchen appliances up where you want them. It's it's very applicable and simple to learn,
Right.
but you need to practice it.
Yeah. And now going right into that next transition, we got the med ball clean, right? And really you can take this into any type of clean. And so a clean is getting something from ground to your shoulders. So now with that med ball, you're basically you can think of like doing that sumo deadlift, but now instead of pulling up, you're gonna stand and that you put the momentum on that ball or that weight so you can get underneath it, right? And so now I can catch it in that front rack, just like our front squat, just like our press, right? So having it up in the shoulders, and then I'm gonna stand it up, right? And this is this is getting your kid up to your shoulders. This is getting a bag of mulch, right? And hey, I got to take this mulch from the car to the driveway or to the backyard, or I have a pile of mulch and rocks or sand, and I've got to move this, but I need to get it to my shoulders. So now it's deadlift it. Now deadlift it with momentum, right? Get that little pull, and I get underneath it, and now I can stand it up with my legs again because I was able to squat, because I was able to front squat. And you can even take this even farther, and now if you learn that clean and you've got it on your shoulders, now I can push press it over my head, I can put it
Mm-hmm.
up on the top shelf. So now this is just like lifting something as high as possible. And when we talked about moving large loads long distances quickly, now we're putting multiple of these movements together to be able to do tons of work.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Even like, man, lifting a couch when you have to clear the railing on the stairs
oh
going
yeah,
up or down, like lifting it up, it's always that transition where people are like, wait, wait, right?
yeah,
Trying to flip your hands around. But if you've practiced these movements, if you've practiced a clean, it's no problem. It's easy and smooth and natural.
yeah. All right, so we've got our 9 foundational movements. And if you did these every day, if you just practice these, you're going to be pretty darn good. But in CrossFit, you often see plenty of other movements. And now, especially, in Fitness in 100 Words, it talks about practicing the major lifts, right? So you're going to squat, you're going to deadlift, you're going to press. But it also has a lot of other things, right? So actually, let me even just, practice and train the major lifts, deadlifts, clean, squat, press, clean and jerk, snatch. Similarly, master the basics of gymnastics, pull-ups, dips, rope climb, push-ups, sit-ups, press to handstand, pirouettes, flips, splits and holds, bike, run, swim, row, and do it hard and fast. 5 or 6 days a week, and mix these elements in as many combinations or patterns as creativity will allow, right? And you go, all right, wait a minute, but what about if most of if the benefit comes from these functional movements, what about all these other things, right? And it's not that they don't have any benefit, but if we're going to do any training, so number one, we need to master these things, right? And so putting these as the forefront of your training is going to help you transfer this to other things. And the cool thing about all these other things, so let's talk like L-sits, right? You go, why in the world? That's not functional. I'm never going to be sitting there with my feet sticking straight out. But these are things, and actually, if you even think about planks and stuff like that, they're just a great tool that is going to allow you to do other like advanced skills as you're practicing these things also. And you know, you've got biking, running, swimming, right? These again, these are things that we do to get around, and we can use them whether it's for conditioning, or just as extra skill practice, right?
Well, and they're all still the same movement patterns
Mm-hmm.
of hip extension and flexion with a stabilized core,
Right.
right? Shoulder extension and flexion with a stabilized core.
Yep.
it's all the same, just in different variations.
Absolutely. But yeah, so all of them, and actually you can even go into your single joint movements, right? So your bicep curls and your hamstring curls and leg extensions and stuff like that. There are times for those, but if you're looking for the most bang for your buck, we want to spend as much time as possible in those functional movements, and then we can supplement. Especially, you know, a lot of those things are great for when we have injuries, right? And maybe I can't do these things. But if you're looking for time efficiency, right, and effectiveness, these multi-joint movements, you could just go back and forth between these things and do it light, do it medium, do it heavy, do it long, do it fast, do it short, right? And you are going to get the fitness that you need by doing those things,
Mm-hmm.
and you're going to be able to transfer it more better.
Yeah, yeah. Like you said, those accessory things, the single joint accessory movements are great for injuries and also when you're first starting out addressing imbalances.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're learning to squat and you're always shifting one side, then you can start to use some of the like single leg lunges and Bulgarian split squats, whatever, to balance things out so that you can do these things more efficiently.
Absolutely. But yeah, so they're important. They're all important. These 9 foundational movements, you know, if you even look, these you see them in all these movements, right? Like you can see each one progressing and where it develops into that next movement, right? You know, you've got a clean and jerk where it's ground to shoulders, shoulders to overhead. It's like it's piecing everything together, so that you can move large loads, long distances quickly. And this is where you're going to get the most benefit when you are applying all these things to your daily life. Because
Mm-hmm.
every rep outside the gym, when you're picking something up, when you're putting something on the shelf, when you are throwing things, these are practice reps. And if we're doing it crappy outside the gym, then there was no point in doing it inside the gym.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. This should be a complex. You could
What
do
do
it
you
with a
mean?
barbell or with just a med ball. Do all 9 movements.
Hmm,
That's one.
I like it.
Do a body weight squat. You could do a med ball clean, into a front squat, do an overhead squat, press, push jerk, deadlift, sumo deadlift.
I
Maybe you
take it
should
back.
start
I don't like that.
with
That might be good for you.
That's the final test.
You're
Final
gonna have to
test for fundamentals.
you're gonna have to make a video of 50 foundational movements for time.
Oh man. I'd probably the hardest part would just be knowing what order you're doing each thing. That does sound kind of fun though. I might try that.
We might have to do it, and we might have to have a competition.
Deal.
Well, cool. All right, so practice your all the foundational movements, do them every day, do them but better. And when you want to go and do other things, think about how you're applying these in what you're doing.
Yep. Yeah,
All right.
you'll see them in everything.
Yeah. Eric, I will see you next week for Do That But Better, 11:30.
See
See
you
you
later.
guys next time.